It has not been a good week for Ed Fitzgerald. First came the revelation last week of a police incident in which he was alone in a car with a woman, not his wife, at 4:30 a.m. And later came the revelations that he drove for a good long time without a driver's license. We're talking about his prospects today on The Opinion Show when we get together with members of the editorial board, the Northeast Ohio Media Group, and the Plain Dealer. I'm here with Opinion Director Betsy Sullivan, Deputy Editorial Page Director and columnist Kevin O'Brien, and editorial writers Sharon Broussard and Chris Evans. So let's get right to it. Let's start with the first of the revelations. Betsy, can you kind of set the stage for us?
Well, yeah, so there had been a police report back in 2012 in Westlake about this incident where an electrician working after hours in an industrial park in Westlake had noticed this car. So the electrician felt that the employer wouldn't want a car parked for that length of time. So he called police. He said he didn't know whether anyone was having sex, but he did not think that the owner of the property would want somebody parked there like that, and the police came. The police report says that Fitz identified the person in the car as a county official, said that he was there with somebody else and they were just talking. But of course, the whole problem is sitting in a dark parking lot at 4:30 in the morning. His explanation for why they were doing that then changed to Henry Gomez, the reporter, and then was contradicted by the rest of the Irish delegation, of which it turns out the woman who was not his wife, who was in the car, was a member of this visiting Irish delegation. Their explanation for how everyone got back to the hotel apart from this woman conflicted with the one that he provided. So it was very inconsistent. This has come out. I mean, obviously, we ran on cleveland.com the whole kind of string of correspondence involving the Republican Governors Association and some others. You know, they were clearly, both candidates were doing opposition research. This has surfaced. There was a big story about it Friday. Ed didn't really have much explanation. He said just completely innocent, but his explanation wasn't consistent with his initial explanation to Henry Gomez, reporter Henry Gomez, nor was it consistent with the account of others who had been part of this Irish trade delegation, which the woman he was with, who was not his wife, was part of this delegation.
Well, and he laid out a story that saying this is innocent, and I think John Kasich is masterminding a smear campaign, look over there, and in the ensuing hours and days, pieces of that story fell apart. I mean, there were two cars, and he said the other car had gotten lost, but then you talk to the driver of the other car, he goes, no, we weren't lost, we knew exactly where we were going. Since then, the witness has spoken to Henry and said it looked like they climbed into the back seat of the car. The police have responded by saying, no, they weren't in the back seat of the car. It just raises a whole lot of questions, but at the heart of this is a question of judgment, I think. Even if he's telling the truth, which many people are questioning, is it wise for someone in public life to pull into a secluded parking lot when there's a lighted gas station right up the road with a woman who's not his wife? And I think that's the crux, is judgment is what you look for in a candidate.
And I think the judgment issue is what is bound up in this whole sequence of revelations. So from this police report, then we learn that he'd been driving without a driver's license for nearly a decade, a valid driver's license, and that he had a learner's permit that night, so the only way he was a legal driver was that he had this woman from Ireland in the car who happened to have an Irish driver's license. But that, I really think that Philip Morris captured in his column today, and Brent Larkin in his column yesterday on cleveland.com, that this is the kind of stupidity and wrongness, as Brent put it, that people can understand readily, as they can understand, I think, readily that if you are a political office holder, you shouldn't be sitting in a secluded, dark parking lot at 4:30 in the morning with a woman who is not your wife. So, I mean, I think it's just pretty basic. And, we were discussing before we went on the air this question of whether, Fitzgerald should really bite the bullet and step down for the good of the Democratic Party. And, my feeling is, yes, he should.
But the problem is the deadline passed at midnight to replace him on the ballot.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. Are you sure about that? Because I looked that up before.
Yeah, no,
it
it's
was
definite.
okay.
The deadline's passed.
Okay.
And he has said he's not dropping out beyond that.
The other thing that struck me was, even more than the incident in the parking lot, is the issue of the driver's license. You know, why would you not get a driver's license for this extended period of time? I mean, I don't understand that. I mean, everybody's busy, but
getting a driver's license, if you come from another state as he did, if you have a valid license, you go in, you take the written test, you get
I
the
know,
license.
because I did the same thing.
But once it expires, you have to take the driving test, which you have to set an appointment for. It's
Which I did myself, as I
did that too. I mean, the point is that he had years to get it done, and he failed to get it done, and he has
And he's the
never,
safety
he will not
director.
admit that something went wrong there, and he should have gotten it done. I would say that in the earlier show, I had said that he should create a narrative for himself, tell the people of Ohio who he is, why he wants to run, all that. There is now a narrative about him, and it's not a narrative that any politician wants out there, but I think he's now wearing that cap because he basically, shot himself in the foot and created it, and that goes back to Kearney, goes back to not giving up the key cards, goes back to not getting a driver's license,
Nyla
poor
Bird.
judgment about the woman, and the
Nyla
inspector
Bird.
general, and he's done it. He's
And the
done it
fact
to
that
himself.
and the fact that he didn't in the press conference where he's saying nothing untoward happened in this dark parking lot at 4:30 in the morning, he never mentions the driver's license. And you'd think he could get a little bit ahead of this and say, oh, by the way, I had to be with her because I can't drive without a licensed driver with me.
But I'm going to get that settled.
I'm gonna get that fixed, yeah. And I did.
You've been strangely silent. What do you think?
I don't know what to make of any of this. I think Philip had probably the best line to describe what was going on, and it was flying by the seat of his pants. How do you have 2 years to think about this thing that could come up and bite you and not have an explanation ready? I mean, the other side's doing opposition research.
But
The chances that they're going to find this thing are pretty good.
Yeah, especially you've got a Republican mayor in Westlake.
he was prepared. Anybody that's dealt with him knows that when controversial things come out, he usually pretty much flies off the handle trying to stop it. This was very different. He had a long explanation. He had his press conference in which he basically said, nothing to see here, folks.
Right.
This is the Republicans' fault. It was very much aimed at it. And if you look at the coverage in most of the state's media the following morning, the tack they took was not Ed Fitzgerald had this questionable incident. It was Ed Fitzgerald says John Kasich is masterminding a smear
But
against
there's
him.
no way that's going to stand up.
Right.
I mean, that might be good for one 24-hour news cycle, but that's about all it's good for, because there's going to be all kinds of head scratching, and it's not just going to be among the media, it's going to be among Mr. and Mrs. Ohio out there saying, wow, can this guy possibly live so differently from the way I live? That doesn't make any sense.
And this is Brent's principal point in his column, is that if you look at the recent Quinnipiac polling, where Fitzgerald was doing pretty well versus Kasich was with the women's vote. And this is going to kill him with the women's vote.
Right. I wonder whether, when he ran for county executive, whether he was clear with the Republican Party that he didn't have a valid driver's license. Democratic, I'm sorry. Or the Republican. Whether he said, look, you guys should know, I don't, just in case this comes up. And then when he...
I'm going home now, can one of you come with me?
Yeah, exactly, I need a ride home. And then again, when he decided to run for governor, whether he said, there's a poison pill out here that you guys should be aware of. One, I still don't have a driver's license. Two, there was this incident in Westlake, and it's out there. Whether the party, whether anybody knew about this, so everybody's blindsided by it.
Yeah, but that requires the kind of openness and ability to kind of critique yourself and then correct whatever is wrong that Fitzgerald has continually shown that he's not very interested in doing.
And the sad thing is, with 3 months to go, roughly, Ohio is denied a debate about what the future should be, because this race is effectively over with these
Right.
two big.
And Kasich, I think, is vulnerable. I mean, you know, I think in terms of going back to that Senate bill, trying to make Ohio a right-to-work state, I think he's vulnerable over Jobs Ohio, and you know, the way he kowtows to the gun lobby.
But that's-
you know, but that's all. I mean,
Nobody's
You know,
Nobody cares.
he just had the huge money advantage. It was always going to be an uphill battle for
Right.
whoever was leading the Democratic ticket. Right now, though, you have the likelihood that the Democratic ticket is going to go down in such flames that it's going to drag everybody on that statewide ticket with
yeah,
it.
I agree. I agree.
If you look at this as a matter of a question and judgment, going back to the beginning of this incident, when there's 5 or 6 people that all need to get rides, and he gets into the car just with a woman, instead of getting a couple of people in the car, which would remove any criticism. Everything that happens that night, pulling into the secluded lot for as long as a half an hour instead of the lighted gas station right a third of a mile up the road, not what Kevin said, not really preparing a robust explanation of this or thinking it through. The driver's license, you know, not getting the driver's license year after year after year, all the way up to and including, is it the right judgment to stay in this race? If you really are a Democratic Party, if you care about the party, staying in this race is doing damage to the party.
I think this actually does speak to maybe the deficiencies in the Democratic Party organization, that they didn't have the party discipline to basically say to their, you know, the top of the ticket, you got to get out for the good of the party and make that stick. And, you know, I do think that there's, you know, something, you know, amiss in Denmark in this whole picture, if you look at it more broadly, because, you know, you're right, there will not now be, you know, even if Kasich was always going to be the front runner, there's not going to be a debate on issues, because everybody's going to be focused on Fitzgerald, the flawed individual.
And Ted Strickland could have stepped in. So whether he could have won or not, but he could have stepped in, a credible candidate who considered running, lost last time, could have made that debate happen without the baggage.
Well, that would have raised the level. So at least you could have a debate about issues. But that's not going to happen now.
Yeah, probably not. I don't think that would have helped.
Really?
I mean, you might have had a debate. I just think you'd have millions of dollars worth of attack ads, and then it would have been over and Kasich would have won. I think Strickland's time has come and long gone. I think that Ohio has washed its hand of Ted Strickland.
Kasich is a dominating force now. The job situation helps him, and things are looking up. But it is what you have every 4 years. You get to debate the future, the direction, and now we are deprived of that. And as Betsy said, the down ticket races, which also merit some discussion, and there should be a discussion going on about Josh Mandel and the Secretary of State. They've been controversial these last few years. But this is a sweep, because people will just be disgusted.
But I think it was always going to be a bad year for the Democrats. I don't think Kasich was nearly as vulnerable as Chris thinks. And I think the Democrats are looking at 4 years from now, you know, that's the race that they're going to have a shot at, because the seat's going to be open, and, you know, let's keep our resources for that. This was always going to, from the day Fitzgerald got in, I thought, oh, this is going to be a sacrificial lamb campaign. He's going to be a good guy for the party. Go out there and fight the good fight, and then 4 years from now, maybe he's a more credible candidate, or someone will be. And I don't think they're really any worse off. I mean, they're worse off.
They are
worse off. Results-wise, they're not any worse off than they would have been, except for maybe some down the ticket.
Yeah. And we have a great line, you know. I mean, is that a hotel in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?
Okay, well, so much for this week's Opinion Show. If you have thoughts about what Ed Fitzgerald should be doing, please leave them in the comments of this post, and we will see you next time.